Google Sites, S-I-T-E-S, is the platform that Google and Google Apps use to create sort of out of the box, just add water websites. So let's pull up the sites interface for our coffeekooks.com. If I go to our dashboard again and look at sites, I can see that the default website for sites is not one of these Coffee Kooks branded core domains. And that's just because people aren't necessarily, when they're looking at your website, going to think to go to the overall sites interface. They just want to see your website. They don't want to see some sort of meta Google Sites. So we need to create a website within the Google Sites application. And for that reason, it's not important that the Google Sites application itself be branded to coffeekooks.com. So I'm just going to copy this sites.google.com/a/coffeekooks.com and press OK. And basically it gives me this handy dandy little interface where it asks if I like to create a site, and I do. So I'll click on create a site. And so here it gives me a few choices that if you're looking at Google Sites for the very first time, you might not know exactly what they mean. One of the things that I had trouble as I was learning how Sites works is the difference between templates and themes and layouts. And so I'm going to sort of give you in words first what those differences are. A template is primarily a prepackaged set of pages for your website. And what's valuable primarily about templates is the logic of the website tree structure. So if I click on Browse the Gallery for more, I can click over to the public site templates, and you see a whole bunch of different designs. And it's important to realize that the designs that your Google site ultimately have in terms of its visual look, like the colors you choose and the images, are all ultimately going to be your own. So it's important not to get too distracted by the visual look, or at least the art that's baked into these templates. What's significant about these templates, and I'll just click on Preview Template for one of them, is the actual pages that are already baked into the website. So when I click the travel journal template, I will already have a web page for important documents, the journal blog, the photo gallery, and the things I want to see. And so this is the value of using templates in the context of your business. And you think about the things that the sort of basic big buckets of content that you'll have inside of your website. A template may have, if you pick the right template, it will already have those sort of buckets specified for you so that you don't have to go in and create the pages yourself. Now, again, as far as the art goes and far as the picture and the colors, you can change those elements. And you may like the template art elements as you see them. But when you're making the choice of the template, you should stay focused on the logic of the site. And in fact, it's kind of unfortunate that when you're browsing through the templates, you can't actually see a file tree to show how your web pages are structured. I'm sure they'll add a feature like that at some point in the future, because it makes it hard to understand exactly what the template is doing. So when you're playing around, go ahead and create sites with various templates just to see how these things work. I'm just going to pick the project wiki template because it has a list. I'll just preview it right here. It has a list of time tracking and to-dos and messages and all this kind of stuff that seems basically applicable to the scenario that we're dealing with, which is our coffee club. So I'm just going to click on select. And so it's selected the project wiki. We've just gone through the template. Important thing you need to know about template, that it's the sort of the semantic logic of your site, what the pages are and how they relate to each other, more than the visual the visual details of your site. We'll get into that again more in a moment. I'm going to name the site Collaborate. We're going to actually have it be the landing page for www.coffeekooks.com, but it needs a name right here, so I'm going to give it a site. I'm going to call it Collaborate. Here is actually the theme element. It actually gives me options for themes, and this might be a source of confusion now that you just picked a template which has a specific look to it. Why would you change that look at this point using a theme? And just the point that I want to I know I'm sort of beating a dead horse with this, is the template is about the pages themselves and what they stand for, not necessarily about the not about the visual details. I can just click on parchment here. This is kind of brown, coffee-esque. So that will be the backdrop. Theme is really about fonts and the page backgrounds. Certainly, there's no the theme has nothing to do with what the pages actually represent the way the template does. So I've picked a parchment theme, and if I click on more options, it will give me a set of choices that you will just see absolutely everywhere inside of Google Apps, which is the sharing level that you want to have for your content. And by default, the site here is set to be visible to everyone at coffeekooks.com. If I wanted to click this other box, I could actually specify only specific people within the coffeekooks.com domain or outside of the domain who I want to allow to view the site. But I'm actually just going to check everybody at Coffee Kooks. And I'm also going to check this box which says let anyone in the world view this site, make it public. And so I can click on create site. And this might take a second, but once it has finished parsing all of my options and putting everything together, then hopefully every one of you in the audience will be able to see this site immediately. So here we go. My site is online. You will be able to see it if you go to sites.google.com/a/coffeekooks.com/collaborate, which is a really cumbersome link. I'm going to head back over here. If I just pull up my dashboard again, oops. If I go, actually, I'm sorry, it's not on the dashboard. This particular configuring the web address for this. I'm actually going to jump into the manage section of my Google Sites. If you click on more actions over here and then on manage this site, you can click on general, and general will show you a bunch of general features, including the web address mapping. I'm just going to do this really quickly so that everybody can see the site as I'm dealing with it. If I click on map this site, I can copy collaborate, so it's collaborate.coffeekooks.com, and press add mapping. And it actually says it may take several hours for that mapping to take. So with any luck, you can type in collaborate.coffeekooks.com immediately to get online with that. But otherwise, you're going to want to use the sites.google.com/a/coffeekooks.com/collaborate. That's the web link that will allow you to see this site. So here we are. We've just created a Google site, and it's in a grid layout, and it has a bunch of placeholder content. The image is for position only, and all of this text is all just sort of dummied Latin. And those of you who were nice enough to write me emails and say that you wanted to participate in collaborating on this site, what I'm going to do is give all of you, up to 50 of you, accounts
on this Google Apps installation and assign some tasks to people to try to get this particular Google Apps site looking more interesting, looking more of our own, really, as opposed to this template, which is like a picture frame that has one of those dummy photos in it. It's not very exciting, but it's a promising start. So that's where we're going to end up ultimately. But right now, I want to take you on a tour of Google Sites and give you an idea about fundamentally how you should think about what's happening here. Now, I'm looking at the home page right now. If I click on Edit Page, it will give me a set of options that, in fact, I'm going to make this full screen. I just pulled it up to full screen. It will give me a set of options that don't look at all like what you would be accustomed to if you are a seasoned web developer and web designer. You can just edit the page directly. What you see is what you can get the way you would edit a Microsoft Word document directly. And there's this button here that says HTML, and it might make you think that when you click on that, you would see HTML for the whole page. But actually, right now, I'm only looking at the HTML that's inside of this specific text box that my cursor is in. So let me cancel out of that. My cursor right here is in this text box. In fact, I'll simplify this. I'll delete the image that's inside the text box, and so now it's primarily text in here. And if I click on HTML, it will show me the HTML only for that, for what's inside the box. It won't show me the entire page's HTML. And this Google Sites is not primarily a web design platform for people who are familiar with HTML or demand to see HTML. It will work fine for people who have never ever touched it before. And when you have options for inputting like actual raw HTML, they're extremely limited. Like, for example, if I were to click on the HTML box again and try to insert just some arbitrary JavaScript that I happen to have on hand, like my own personal widget that I created, it actually wouldn't let me. It will not let me do it because it's very, very sandboxed. It's designed to be safe. It's not designed to be, if you want to create a spam site, this is not the place to do it. So
darn.
You're kind of, I'm sorry?
I just said, oh, darn.
Yeah, darn, exactly. Yeah. But so just right off the bat, what we noticed is that this is, it's definitely you're doing some web design, but it's very, very highly constrained by comparison to just editing raw HTML. The next thing you notice when we click on edit is that we have these big boxes for recent announcements and recent list items, and there's a big box down here for Google Spreadsheet. And what these are, the term of art to describe what these things are is gadgets. And there are a number of gadgets that are Google authored, and there are also some gadgets that are third-party authored that we can talk about a little bit later if you like. But basically, this announcements gadget and this list items gadget does something very simple. It gives a snapshot of information that's coming out of other pages on our website. So if I click Save on this, we can see here under Messages, this particular box here is our recent announcements gadget. And if I look down here at View More, it'll take me to the recent announcements page, which it actually calls the project update page. So we can click here on the sidebar. And so here we can see, the posts that are located on this page. And these posts, if we head back to the previous page, are sort of previewed here. And it's the same thing inside of our gadget. It's the same thing with this task list that we have here. This is showing 3 items from page to-dos. If we click over here on page to-dos, it will show in a more schematic sense those particular items. So one of the things that made Google Sites more easily for me to understand was when I realized that, Google Apps is a collaboration platform, and Google Sites is is a collaboration tool long before it's a presentation, get out the word tool. If you had a business and you wanted to have a fancy Flash website that showcased your products, you wouldn't want to use Google Sites for it. But if you had 50 people that you needed to work together with on a project, then Google Sites would be extremely useful for that. And these core gadgets that I've been showing you here, like the gadget that shows recent announcements and the gadget that shows recent list items. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. These gadgets are really about taking that user-contributed content and piping it into a place where it can be viewed by other users. So Google Sites may frustrate you if what you're expecting is a place to sort of showcase creativity for web design, but in terms of having a platform with a variety of different venues for adding user-generated content and sharing it and collaborating on it, that is what Google Sites is all about. So I think actually, I'm halfway through my 6th presentation, but this actually sort of feels like a natural stopping point to take a couple of questions about Google Sites. The next step, just so you know, is I'm going to actually head back over to the management console and show you in a little bit more detail what's going on under the hood behind this particular Google site that we've just created. But now I would be happy to hit a couple of questions now before moving on.
Awesome. I have a question from the chat room. How do Google Sites compare with WordPress sites?
Sure. So I know a little bit of, even though web design and development is not my primary area of expertise, I know a little bit about this. WordPress is primarily something that we think of as being a blog, but it is also, and I say primarily, other people may actually argue, instead of rather being blog, it's primarily a CMS or a content management system. And if you've ever heard of Drupal is a very, very robust open source content management system. And from the perspective of end users, what makes these systems powerful is that it makes it really fast and easy for you to add content to the website without needing to have any coding chops. So, if I'm reading somebody's message, or if I want to assign a task, Google Sites and WordPress and Drupal as content management systems would make that very easy. It would give me login credentials. It would allow me to have an individualized set of login credentials that would identify me as myself, and it would allow me to post content without having to write any sort of code or think about the underlying structure of the site. There's a whole lot more to it than that, and I think that probably a pretty safe generalization would be that as a content management systems, WordPress and especially Drupal are just way, 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 way more powerful than Google Sites. Certainly in terms of the ability for you to tinker with what's going on in the back end, and for you to hack the software itself and run sketchy JavaScript code if you're interested in doing that. You have a whole lot more flexibility with WordPress and with Drupal. However, what you get for that flexibility is a lot of sort of complication of setup, and both of those pieces of software, WordPress and Drupal, are relatively straightforward to set up, but they're not as easy as this. And I would also say that once you get into Google Sites and you start looking at the galleries and so forth, you can see that people have come up with really, really formidable Google Sites that are aesthetically gorgeous and are obviously very highly used. So, long answer to a very short question. There's definitely functional overlap among those pieces of software, but certainly if you're not a technical wizard and you just want to get up and running and collaborating, there's quite a lot to be said for Google Sites.
And Michael, we have a question from the audience.
Hi, Michael. This is Bruce. So I come from a Microsoft background. This looks very analogous to SharePoint. And
Yes.
So, and based on your previous answer, I'm assuming you don't have the back-end development capability that you would with a SharePoint site with a Google site.
Yeah, I think that's just absolutely right. I mean, I think that SharePoint. SharePoint. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's typically a locally hosted, or is it? I mean, is SharePoint typically something that you would host on your own servers locally?
Generally, yes. You can make it available worldwide, but yes, it's generally locally hosted for your business.
Sure. Yeah, that's actually getting kind of a field of what I of what I can speak intelligently about. But yeah, I mean, you are constrained. You are very, very constrained. I mean, you can probably make $150,000 a year being a SharePoint guru, but you're not going to be doing that being a Google Sites guru. However, for sort of basic small team collaboration, I mean, the question when you're making a decision between of a much more robust package like that and something like this is, what exactly is the functionality that the more robust platform will get me that I'm not already getting with something that's really inexpensive and lean and mean and functional the way Google Sites is. So, certainly if there was, I think one of the things we have to be careful about is you really can't underestimate the power of Google Sites. Yes, you are constrained in what you can do, but you can put up an enormous amount of content. You can keep it very strictly and logically organized. You can have absolutely excellent design to it. So I mean, it's no slouch of software. It's very powerful software. I think it'll be more than enough over the next 5 weeks to keep us satisfied with it. But if there is with something like SharePoint or an open source content management system, a specific set of features that's a hot button for your particular business, then yeah, that would be why you would choose it over Google Sites.
Okay, we have a couple of the questions about this, but I think it'd be better to put them off to the end so that you can finish up, because we only have about 20 minutes left. And
sure.
We'll come back to those unanswered questions at the end.
Sure. So I'm going to I've been talking a little bit about the structure of our website, the page structure, which, as I said, I would like to see, the template preview for Google Sites show you that structure, and it kind of doesn't. But in order to see that structure in a schematic format, what you should do is click on More Actions, and you have a whole bunch of different options here. And the most important option, I think, and the one that you'll be clicking on most frequently, is the Manage Site option. And when you click on Manage Site, let me blow this up a little bit. The first page you see is recent site activity, and there really hasn't been much along with it. So there's not going to be a lot there. But if you click on Pages, then here I can see a tree that sort of lists schematically how my site is structured and organized. We have, all of these different elements. We have an update page and an individual page for each of the updates that are created, and we've got a team page and a time tracker and a to-do page and all this sort of stuff. And once you really start adding pages, or once your users start adding pages, you'll need to make decisions about how that content fits in the overall scheme of your Google site installation. It may be that if you're doing a whole lot of intense collaboration and just a lot of messaging, then this project updates branch will end up getting really full. And it may be that your website itself will have a great deal of static pages so that this ends up getting very long. But this tree right here is actually the template itself that you're looking at, and how the template divides pages conceptually into each and every one of them. And there are a couple of different types of pages. Actually, let me go back here. That I want to draw your attention to. When you go over to page templates, when you create a page, you have to make a decision about what the basic type of page is. So if and by default you have a few options: announcements, file cabinets, lists, etc. If I were interested, for example, in creating another announcements page, like if we go to the Google site that we just created, we have this widget here gadget here that you've been looking at, which shows a feed of blog-like posts that come from the project updates page. And the project updates page has been created out of the template of announcements. So if I wanted to create a page for coffee tasting problems, for example, that I intended to be like a message board or a blog style posting format, I would want to create it using the announcements templates, and then the announcement template. And then once I created it with that template, I could create a gadget that I put on the front page of the website that showed little clips, from that feed. I'm not going to go through each individual one of these. I just want you to understand that you have, within Google Sites, you have site templates, and that was like the very first decision that we made, and that had a packaged set of pages that show up in our particular template that we chose. It shows up in this format. And then when you want to add pages, you get to choose from you get to choose from among one or many page templates, and there are a few of them that are sort of out of the box: announcements, file cabinets, lists. You can create your own page template, and then when you create pages that you integrate them within the tree that you already have in place if you started off with the site template, or you do have the option of starting without a template at all, and you just end up with a naked page to add to. So these things, for people who are familiar with any sort of web design, even minimally, as I am, a lot of these concepts of, what's a template, what's a theme, what's a gadget, how do these things all flow into each other, was kind of discombobulating and confounding. Like, what are these sort of things that Google has decided to name them? But I think that when you're looking at, from a business perspective, when you're looking at all of these options, you need to remain focused on the fact that your Google site is generally going to be primarily a collaboration platform. And so you may want to start with what types of collaborations do you think your team is going to be doing, and then sort of reason backwards to, okay, I'm going to tend to need an announcement page or a file cabinet around these types of subtopics for these types of people, and so forth, as opposed to because the website template, which is the first question that you're posed with, is kind of a big choice to make, and you should think about how your users are going to be collaborating before you make that choice. If you are interested purely in the cosmetic elements, when you're on the management page for your Google site, you can click down into this bottom third area where you will see the themes that we had the option of choosing from at the very beginning. That's very easy to change, and you can also change the background colors and the fonts and all that sort of stuff for your website as well. So you're not necessarily locked into a specific structure once you pick a template at the beginning, but you know, it's a good choice to make carefully. So we're getting thin on time. I'm just going to point out one final thing. The general area of the site settings area of your management console for Google Sites is where you will have, you'll be able to do a whole bunch of different interesting things. You can change the name of your sites. You can enable Google Analytics for your site, which, as Brian mentioned earlier, is a very powerful thing. It's really, really easy to do. All you have to do is use your Google account to create a Google Analytics web property ID and just paste it right there. And once you do that, you'll be totally online with Google Analytics for this site. You'll know exactly where all your traffic is coming from. And there's also, you have the ability to set up Google Webmaster Tools here also, which are very useful for search engine optimization for your site. So if you have your site available for the world to see, as we do, and you want to encourage traffic there, you have the ability to use Google Analytics and Webmaster Tools to optimize for that. You can also click this lovely, lovely link here called Monetize, and I wish it was just as easy as clicking on a link to monetize a website, but when you click on this link, you give yourself access to Google AdSense platform so that you can serve Google Ads on your website, which you know, is basically among those different functionalities. You're able to integrate your Google site into the full range of Google website tools. So with 10 minutes left, I could keep going, but I think that we should probably close it out with questions, and I certainly hit on the most important elements of the setup and sites. So let's have some more questions.
Okay, I've got one from actually more than one person in GoToWebinar. I've got how much space does Google allow for sites, documents, email, etc.?
Right. Well, it's interesting because different properties have different space limits for different editions of Google Apps. So if I'm just going to type in Google Apps sites space limit, and I think that this is the website I looked at. I saw earlier that I was talking about. So basically, for sites that are created under sites.google.com, it's 100 megabytes. For the standard edition of Google Apps, it's 10 gigabytes, which is a awfully large website. And then there are other editions that have different permutations of Google Apps and different amounts depending on how many users you have and all that. By the time you have a website that takes up more than 10 gigabytes of information, then you hopefully will have some reason to think that it would be advantageous of you to upgrade to the Premier Edition. But yes, so it's 10 gigabytes for the standard edition.
Okay, and also a couple of people were asking about Google Analytics. Can you integrate that with your Google sites?
Yeah, I mean, I just touched on that. I mean, basically, it's what you do is if you go to Google Analytics, which is google.com/analytics, I can click on Access Analytics, and this is not the right account. Let me log into. Actually, I think it wants me to have just a plain Google account, not a Google Apps account. But basically, if you use your just plain Google account and log into Google Analytics, you will get an access code, and that access code you can put into the general area of your managed site settings for Google. For your, you can put it. You can take the access code that you got from Google Analytics and go to your Google Sites area, click on management, then click on general, and then right here under statistics, you can click this check marks and put your access code in there. And literally that's all you have to do. I mean, it may take a couple of hours to update, and I'll actually do that when we go offline because I know people are going to be looking at this website. So I'll just so that I can show you on subsequent discussions, what our hits are, what our usage is for Google Analytics. But it's just totally easy. And I know that for people who have other websites like WordPress, it's a little bit more elaborate. I mean, people have plugins to try to make it easy because basically Google Analytics has to put tracking code on each and every page of your entire website in order to be useful. And so it's really nice here that if you just put it into this little blank, that Google Sites will take care of it all in one place.
Okay. I'll just ask one more quick question here and give someone else a chance, even though I have a few more questions. Is it possible to map the Google site that you're creating to your main domain name, so your domain.com or www.domain.com?
Sure. So it turns out that www is a CNAME the same way that docs or mail might be. So what you would do in the context of Google Sites, and I won't be able to make this live immediately because as we've seen, sometimes it takes a second to update. If I pull up my dashboard, I'm pulling up my dashboard because I purchased this particular domain name through Google, but if I were to do it for my own, own personal website, I would have to go to the Google, I have to go to the GoDaddy domain name management tool. But if I click on domain settings and then over to domain names, and then under advanced DNS settings, I don't know why it does that to me. The software I've been using for password management is called 1Password. It's just really nice and easy. So for www, right now it's actually set to redirect to ghs.google.com. But let me look at if I look at my GoDaddy account, I can see that right now www is set to redirect to the A host, which points to this particular IP address. So I could actually change www to my ghs.google.com, and then it would redirect to Google as opposed to looking at my WordPress installation. So yeah, it's definitely, it actually becomes a little bit trickier if we wanted it to go just to plain old coffeekooks.com as opposed to www.coffeekooks.com. There's some tricks involved. You have to set up domain forwarding at the naked root level, but yeah, I would start off with the CNAMEs in www.
Just real quick, Michael, I think what's confusing some people is right now it's set for collaborate.coffeekooks.com and not coffeekooks.com with the www aside. And yes, it is very easy to make it coffeekooks.com, but that's not what we've done so far.
Right. So actually I can, hold on. I think you also should take a look under, I'm back at my control panel right here, and if I go to sites, and if I go to change URL, I actually have to, actually that's not it, I'm sorry. I think it's under, yeah, here we go, web address mapping. I have to delete this mapping. So if you go under, hold on. So I'm just creating a new mapping right here for www. And right now, basically, if I'm just to walk right through it again, if I start off at my dashboard and then I go to sites, and then I go to web address mapping. www was already set up to take you to sites, but right now I have it set up to take you to the Collaborate site that I just created. And again, you know, it may take a couple of minutes for that particular mapping to update, but you know, within an hour or two, www.coffeekooks.com will take you to the Collaborate Google site that we just created.
It's live now.
Okay, well there you go. They happen immediately.
A number of people have been asking about adding different Google Apps elements to their site, and I know that's something you're going to cover. Can you talk just a little bit about the various Google App elements that you're going to be adding?
Oh, you know, I wish I had spoken more quickly earlier, and we didn't really get a chance to get into this. Let me go back to the sites. I'll go back to my Collaborate website. And when I click on Edit Page, the Insert menu gives me a huge range of options. This Insert menu shows me not only down here the gadgets I've been talking about for recent posts and all that, but also you know, if I want to create if I want to insert a Google document directly in here, or a map, or a slideshow, or even a Google or YouTube video, it's very easy to do it from this particular dialog box. If I click on More Gadgets over here, I can insert all sorts of stuff into my all sorts of stuff all sorts of gadgets that have been created by third-party developers. So if I click on, Pac-Man here, I can click OK, and that's not what we wanted to do. I put it in a bad place, but basically now everybody who's looking at my website can see Pac-Man way up at the top of the website. So enjoy it while it lasts, because it's getting ready to go away pretty quickly. But yes, it's a fully functional version of Pac-Man. But it's interesting. It's just for people who are accustomed to doing any sort of web design before, this is kind of funny, because instead of, if you want to add new content, instead of thinking, okay, what's the code that I need to come up with, the question is really, what's the gadget, and how does the content fit to a gadget that already exists? So if in the course of our collaboration we end up coming up with a presentation that we like a whole lot, it's very easy to click on Insert and go to Presentation. Like in my particular case, well, we'll actually, it gives me a list of all the presentations that that I have access to on my account, but I don't actually have access set up to them, so that like all of these particular presentations are private. So even if I embedded them into a gadget, you wouldn't be able to see them. But as we go through the individual applications, I'll show you how to share, for example, presentations or drawings or spreadsheets on the web individually. But within the context of Google Sites, if you want to ever do anything like that, what you do is you head over to this Insert menu and stick the gadget in there.
And actually, I wanted to follow that up with, somebody asked, what's the difference between a widget and a gadget? Are they two words for the same thing?
Widget is what I say when I mean gadget.
Got it. Okay.
In the Google site world, the word is gadget.
Okay.
And if I say widget, then I'm thinking about OS X or something. So I apologize for that.
Okay. And then is Google Sites backed up? Is there a backup facility? Is that something we even need to worry about? I'm assuming Google is massively storing all these things in their special ways and wouldn't lose my data,
Yeah.
but do they guarantee it?
Right. They actually have one of the topics that we're going to get to a little bit later on has to do with the security and redundancy of data that that is hosted inside of a Google Sites installation. And just the extremely short answer about that for now is simply that you do get more assurance if you upgrade to a pay version like Google Apps Premier than if you operate under the standard version. I feel fairly confident that that, you know, as with everything, your specific data is redundant on Google's side. I've never, in all my research, I haven't found a situation where people complain about their site being lost. And I'm pretty sure that you can download it from within. I'm pretty sure you can download your entire site I'm not going to look for the interface to that now, but I'm pretty sure you can download your entire site from within the management console if you want to. And certainly I know that there's services that specialize in migrating Google Sites to other platforms if you want portability like that. So yeah, I mean, it's your intuition is correct. I feel very confident it's redundant on Google's side. But if you're uber paranoid about it, then there are things you get with the Google Apps Premier upgrade that we'll discuss in greater detail at a later date.
And if I mistakenly deleted a site, can I get it back?
No, you cannot. Or at least the delete site interface screams at you, this is not reversible. So think very carefully about deleting the site if that's something you're contemplating.
Is there a single owner of a collaborative site? I mean, does one person have authority over being able to delete entire pages or sites?
Right. So that's a really good question. If we go back to the manage site area of Google Sites, we can see under the sharing section that there are 3 different user types for people who are going to be involved in Google Sites. There are owners, collaborators, and viewers. And viewers, as you can imagine, has the most restricted degree of access. Basically, it's people within the overall domain. Like right now, I have anyone at coffeekooks.com. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me back up. There's a few different permutations right now. Currently, I have this set so that it's viewable to anyone in the world. But right now, I have it set at the domain level that anyone at coffeekooks.com may view, but may edit this site. So if I wanted to, I could switch it to anyone at coffeekooks.com may view this site. And if I wanted to add Brian as a collaborator, I could just type in, Brian. You're actually Brian at coffeekooks.com. I can invite these people. I just wrote him a note that says collaborate. So now Brian is listed as a collaborator. So I just, by default, because he's on the coffeekooks.com domain, he is able to view the site along with anyone else in the world. But I just invited him personally to become a collaborator on the site. So now he has the opportunity, if he wants, to submit content to the message boards that we have, or add tasks, or upload files to the filing cabinets. But he doesn't have the ability to start deleting pages if he wanted to. I would have to upgrade him to the owner level, and as an owner, he would have that ability. He would be the system administrator along with me for the overall website. So as with everything, inside of Google Apps, there's a fine-tune access control, as you like here.